All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving entrepreneurs throughout the US and around the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am so excited to bring you my friend and a fellow Seattleite, Tracey Warren. Tracey, welcome.
Hi, so glad to be here. Thank
So
you.
good. Yeah, so good to see you again. It's been a few years, I think, since we last probably actually saw each other.
Yes.
For
I
those
feel
of
like that for everybody right now.
right, I know, so crazy. One of these days,
Mhm.
maybe an in-person thing again soon. For folks that don't know Tracey Warren teaches business owners how to grow a business and create profitable community with ease and joy by making marketing fun, simple, easy, and effective. And if you are connected to Tracey online, you know how she makes this true. She is an author, truth teller, community creator, and fun, authentic speaker. She is a bold example of how authenticity and vulnerability can be a huge asset for entrepreneurs who want to build community. Whatever trail she blazes and every journey she travels, including her recent victory over breast cancer, she shows up fully as herself. Tracey, I am so excited about your victories, all of them, but especially that one. And
Yes.
I'm so happy to have you here today. Community now more than ever is so important. So I
Oh,
think this topic we are overdue for on the podcast. I don't think I've spoken with somebody yet that specializes in building community and training people how to build communities. So I've really been looking forward to this.
hey, me too. I
Yay!
can't, yeah, I start talking about community and I start talking faster and louder. And I'm like, okay, Tracey, chill out a little bit.
Slow down on the caffeine a bit.
Yes.
Yes. So, when did you first identify yourself as a community builder?
I think I've always done it, but
Mhm.
really owning it for the last couple of years. I think one of the things that the pandemic taught us is there were a lot of people who thought they were part of a community until we stopped seeing people face to face.
Yeah.
And then it became blatantly obvious how what we had was proximity relationships, not actual connection.
Proximity relationships. Yes.
So, like you go to church every Sunday, and so you see those people on Sunday, but every other day of the week, they don't know you exist.
Yeah.
I think that can be the same sometimes in networking groups where, yeah, I don't want to go too deep into that, but, that if the relationship relies on seeing one another in real life, and there's no other contact outside of that, then it's not necessarily an actual community. It could just be a proximity relationship.
Right. Well, and especially once that proximity goes away, right? Like in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of a pandemic, like you said, then you realize how entirely absent community can be and how much effort it can take to really maintain constant connection, right? And I think
Yes.
particularly so as an example, I grew up in Walla Walla, right? Smaller town across the state, lived on my bicycle, pretty much not really like knew everybody in town, but people, you wave, you say hi to everyone, right? It
Sure.
definitely has that smaller town feel versus Seattle, where some of my favorite people live across the city or
Yeah.
outside of the city or what. It's a much bigger effort to actually be able to see people, to maintain regular connection, even for people that I really care a great deal about, right? So
Yes.
that sense of like what it really takes to nurture those connections and create community just has to happen on an entirely different scale when it comes to effort.
Yes. And you really do have to be intentional,
Yes.
especially with those most important relationships. But I will also say that those most important people, that even when you haven't seen them for, I don't know, 18 months,
Yeah.
it's as if a beat hasn't even skipped.
Totally. It's,
Yeah.
getting down to the essentials of relationship building, period. That's always true when you have a real relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'm fascinated by this idea of proximity relationships, because now, even as I think of it, like I'm thinking about my roots in Walla Walla, so much of that was probably just proximity relationship, right?
Well, and it's funny that we're even focusing on this, because this is not something I normally even talk about, but
Yeah.
it's come up recently that, yeah, if you don't see them,
And they don't really know much else about your life, right? I
right?
think that part is key. Like outside of those limited interactions, you don't really have much knowledge of each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
That can actually absolutely be true.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, I mean, you and I met, I'm guessing over 5 years ago in some of my early outings into some of the entrepreneurial groups here in Seattle, right? This was,
I think we met at a Chick Chat,
oh,
one of Tracy Claycroft's events.
yes,
I think that
really
that's
early
right.
on.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that's right. And so that would have been after my son Aiden, but well before Miss Henley, right? Us moms, like everything is related around children and when I could actually leave the house and when I wasn't 9 months pregnant, right? And all of
sure.
this stuff. But so I've always thought of you in the sense of being in community, in the entrepreneurial community, in the Seattle community, in the female entrepreneur community, right? There's all these ways that I think our worlds have overlapped a bit. And we're connected online. I follow you online. I get to see what you're up to. And of course, I've always seen you as somebody like really central to community. But as you and I were talking before we went live, that's not natural for a lot of people, right? To build community and be community builders. What is it? Is it something inherent, do you think, in your personality? Like, what is it about you that makes you so naturally inclined to, be all about community?
I think, I was working with a copywriter a while back, and we talked about this and where it
Mhm.
started. And I know that as a kid, I mean, we moved like 40 times growing up. And
Wow.
so I think that that might have been part of it, that I
Mm,
was always having to go to a new school and meet new people. And so I didn't have I didn't have that
you didn't have it
built in.
automatically built in. You had to create it.
I had to create it. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's part of it.
Mm,
But also just some of the other things that I just do naturally. It's about doing, I mean, you can be status quo and you can build a great business being status
mm.
quo. But if you really want people to remember you, to like, wow, I can't believe she did that. Like, I had a friend, she texted me the other day and said, I've had a really bad day. And I immediately called her. I'm like,
Right.
you can't just message me that or you can't just post on Facebook that you're having a bad day without me calling you. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. But that's not how a lot of people think, right? Somebody's dog died and they say, oh, sorry, that sucks. Hugs, enter on Facebook. And that's the
Right.
end of the conversation. And 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 that's fine, but I'm not willing to just be fine.
Mm-hmm. Is it because I think, so many of us want relationships, right? And we want meaningful relationships. We
Yeah.
notice in the absence of those relationships how challenging life can be,
Hmm.
right? And I think it's become really apparent for certain people. Even my husband and I were talking, I mean, we've talked about this actually numerous times over the years. Our journey, let's call it our journey to parenting, and then our journey since becoming parents has been really challenging in certain ways. I have felt personally challenged in my ability to stay as connected as I want to community, to, like it's pretty much like my life gets divided up between my job as a mom, which I love. I call it a job because it just takes up so much of my life, right?
Yeah.
And my time in my business, so that like any time outside of that feels kind of like it doesn't exist. It's like those two things are nothing. And so the ability for me, I mean, I'll just say, I don't think I've done this very well, being able to maintain connections in the community and nurture relationships the way that I would want to, based on like probably how I've allocated resources in my life towards these two other functions, right? But it's not for lack of wanting. It's not for lack of wanting. So,
Well, and I would also say that your close friends, they're going to give you a ton of grace, right? Like
yeah,
there's lots of opportunities to give grace. And I feel like it's a good reminder for me that there are times when I'm not going to be the one reaching out.
yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I learned going through treatment last year, was that last year was the year for me to receive. It wasn't like I had somebody bring me soup or something and she was like, you better not send me a thank you note.
Right. No thank yous for this.
And I was like, oh, okay, oh, that's really hard. But it was my time to receive. And I think we all experience ebbs and flows in our lives where we're going to be more present than, I mean, we can't be present all the time for everyone else.
Yeah.
That was when I was doing the final edits of my book. I asked the publisher, I was like, should I put something in there about making sure that you put your oxygen mask on first, basically? And she's like, no, there are thousands of books about that.
Yes.
I mean, you can't take care of, nurture other people if you're not taking care of yourself. And I didn't need to mention that in the book.
Right.
I think for people to understand, like, oh yeah,
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a truth. Well, and that's an important reminder about the ebbing and flowing kind of life, and that we go through times of giving and times of receiving. For folks that are listening to this podcast and are entrepreneurs, are building their own businesses, maybe they have already, maybe they're on the journey, and they think about the idea of like building community. I think for many that feels like, whoa, like a big, like a pretty big scope. You know what I mean? Is
Yeah.
it? Is it big? Do we overthink it? Like, talk to me about why it feels challenging for so many of us, right?
Yes, we absolutely overthink it. And I think, one of the ways to simplify it is to just identify people, like identify 20 people, 10 people, right? Like once you start to identify those folks, the people that I call champions, like it's easy to go, ooh, I want to add that person and that person and that person. But when you identify who these people are, then you can develop a plan. But if you go, I want to build a community out of everyone I'm connected to on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, well, that's ludicrous, right? That's too much noise. But if you can pare it down to a small group of people who you're like, okay, these are the people, and I want to show up where they are, or I want to engage with them where they're at. I want to make them part of my touch point plan. That's the easiest way to break it down, is to just identify a handful of people instead of all the people.
I love that. Well, and yeah, even, I mean, obviously we've got more to talk about with your book, Ignite Your Champions, right? So you said that just published 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
Yes.
It's super. I really got serious about writing it in February. I took a retreat, and basically I just needed time to organize all of the words I've ever written, which turned out to be a lot.
Right?
And
That
then,
idea right now, people are going,
oh my gosh.
organizing all the words I've ever written. Holy cow.
Well, and I know there's probably dozens of ways to write a book,
Yeah.
and but putting it all together and then separating it out and then putting it all back together is what I did. But because I put it in like I put it in a framework, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's and once I did that, then it's like, oh, okay, then I know exactly where this content goes. It goes in this section. And uh yeah,
Awesome. So it's like engineering the outline of the book and then piecing together what you'd already created to fit
yes.
into that outline. Yeah.
And then adding more content. And then I
Yeah.
took some out, and I actually have this file somewhere on my computer, like stuff that didn't make it into the book.
Right.
And like it's valuable, but did it need to be in the book? Nah, it can be a blog post, or I could do a YouTube video about it or something. It didn't need to be in
Totally.
the book.
Well, I love that. There's a woman that helps people create courses, and she tells people, because our tendency, especially if we're experts in our space, is to put everything we ever knew about this subject into the course, right? And she's like, no, 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 no. I think she tells them that they can have like a vault. She calls it like the vault, like put everything there. We're only going to put like really select few things over here into the course, but you can keep the vault. You can have your clients access that in other ways, right? That's it, kind of like ring that bell
Yeah,
for me. Like, yeah, sometimes we need that vault. And like you said, that makes great blog posts or content
sure.
for other things. So, walk us through some of the key concepts of Ignite Your Champions, right? Because this is a book all about how to create community, right?
Yeah, the subtitle is Build Your Business by Creating Connection and Community.
Yeah.
The greatest thing about that subtitle is that's exactly what the book's about. So when somebody says, "What's the book about?" I'm like, that's it.
It's not false advertising.
No. So it's about the framework is FIRE. So it's
Mhm.
about building a foundation, generating ignition, building relationships, and creating engagement. So we
Mm.
can build our own fire in our businesses, because I believe community changes the world, or community can change the world. And it can impact our businesses because it makes it easy to ask for help. Like there's all sorts
Mm.
of things. So a friend of mine, she was like, I know you're anti Facebook ads, but here's this gal and check out her course. And I wrote back and I said, I'm not so much anti ads as I am pro community, right? Like I can get far further in my reach or impact by asking 10 of my champions to share something than I can by dropping $20 on a Facebook ad.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really, it's when I say bringing joy and ease to marketing, that I am dead serious about that. In fact, I'm getting ready to launch a podcast when I can get my act together and write some podcast episodes. But
Woohoo!
even doing the podcast, my husband is an audio engineer by training, and so I know him. He's going to want the edits to be perfect, and I keep reminding him joy and ease. Everything about my business is joy and ease. So
Yeah.
I want that to be the same thing for the podcast. Like
Oh my
I don't want to
gosh.
overcomplicate this,
No.
because it's not sustainable or duplicatable or any of those things, right? So joy and ease.
Well, and I was gonna laugh because people hearing joy and ease in the same sentence as marketing are probably like, it's like
Yeah,
that disconnect.
it's
Like,
got some
wait,
really good
like
cognitive dissonance going on for sure.
totally. I pictured like a robot like freaking out a little bit, like getting two different commands,
Yeah.
joy and ease and marketing. Um, so tell us, I mean, and I'm sure this list is long. What do people get wrong about building community, or even thinking about building community, right? I think you touched on one of the points already, which is that like they spam everyone in their network instead of being really select about how they go about, initiating probably the foundation, if I were to guess, of like how they're going to create that community, right?
Well, I think one of the things that they get wrong, air bunnies,
Mm-hmm.
is they're connecting with people the way they want to connect with them, not the way the people want to be connected with.
Ding, 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 ding. This is like the 4 love languages, right? Like, well,
Yes.
my partner should just understand that I want to be connected with this way,
Yeah.
right? And they really don't know. And we're
So it's
probably in reverse, not doing it the right way
right.
for them as well. Yes.
Well, and so we all know the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others, but the platinum rule is do unto others as they would have done to them, right?
Yes.
And so when someone says, "Oh my gosh, don't call me. I will never answer the phone. Send me a text." Great. I need to make
Yeah.
note of that and honor what they
Mm,
want. So I think that is a challenge that people have,
mm,
is that they're doing what they like. And so there's a gal here that is at my office, and when her birthday comes around, I always jokingly say to her, like, okay, I know you don't care about words of encouragement, so I am not sending you a birthday card. But next time you come to the office, I will take you to Starbucks, because her love language is quality time. And I just
I was
know
gonna
this.
guess it is her love language coffee, right? That's one of my love
No,
languages.
well, yes, but
Quality time. I hear you.
so I think that being aware of how other people, so I have another friend, like, I know words of encouragement is hers. So great. That means she's going to get mail from me more often. She's going to get emails from me more often that just say, "Hey, I just wanted to remind you, you're awesome," or whatever, right? It doesn't need to be that big of a deal. But letting them talking to them in their language, I
Yeah.
think, is really important.
That, it's a huge point, and it's interesting because I know a few folks who teach entrepreneurs, teach business owners how to address people, right? There's all these personality, profiles that you can
Yeah.
create, right? And there's a whole bunch of different versions out there, but based on that certain type of language, for example, is going to be really comforting to one kind of person and super annoying to the guy right next to him, right?
Mhm.
And so to the extent that even when we're connecting with folks one-on-one, that we can start to pay attention to these things, if there are, who we want to be in community with or
Yeah.
want to have as a client, that extra level of attention. So interesting, because when you think about a romantic relationship, like, of course, we would all be willing to put in the effort that it takes to do that. And yet in business, we can so easily skip it, right? We
Oh,
can miss
sure.
it.
Totally miss it. And I think when so I own a co-working space, and we've been
Yes.
here for 4.5 years. And I remember when I was first writing, like, the website copy, I am a massive extrovert. And my husband was like, "You don't want introverts to come there, do you?" And I go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. Like, what am I doing?" And but it was the language that I was using, which was
Mm,
very like, "Come, join us. Let's have fun." And him saying that allowed me, like, okay, tone down my extrovert language.
mm,
But I even pay attention. Like, there's some people that when they come in the door, they're just quieter. So I'm like, do I say good morning to that person? Because they might just want to come in and not be talked to, right? Like, and that's
mm,
fine. But I want to make sure to honor that
mm.
in other people.
Well,
Yeah, you can talk to
I,
me anytime, but
yeah, right. I know. Well, and it's just really important. I mean, even to be having this conversation, that as a reminder to just wonder about those things and maybe even ask the question, right? Somebody coming into a co-working space, you're right, they might like want to go have a quiet corner and just be looking to, like, if they're in my house, get out of the house away from
Sure.
children or whatever, right? But I think it's an important reminder to be really open-minded about what are people's preferences, and to, as much as possible, respect those preferences. And it's not that, because some of us, for example, we may prefer to work with extroverts. Maybe something that we provide in our business around a certain kind of service relies exclusively on mostly working with extroverts, right? It's not beyond the realm of possibility. And many of us can be working with a wide range of personalities, and we just need to take that extra care of using language. Like, so for example, do you know Jane Powers?
I do.
I forget even what her system is called, so she's going to clobber me on the head for that. But she's got a system, and 4 different personalities, and some people are catalysts and some people are optimizers, and some people are experts, but you use very different language for each of those folks. And even just remembering, like you said, in your sales copy or in a conversation, that some people need the hand holding and like, don't worry, we're going to walk you step by step through this, and some people don't, can help you to more appropriately address people. That's a really, I think, particularly important point in the context of building community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Watch their face.
Yeah.
Right. If their face glazes over, like, stop whatever you're doing and just check in, right? Or whatever.
Right. So what else do people get wrong or misunderstand or overlook in the process of, either preparing for or actually trying to build community?
Well, I think if there were one other big mistake that people make, is trying to be for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, 2 things. One, trying to be for everyone, and therefore not ever expressing an opinion, saying they work with everybody, which is not accurate, or trying to be everywhere, right? Like, oh, well, I have to do Instagram reels and stories and posts and IGTV and, oh yeah, and all the Facebook and all the, yeah. So I think the everyone thing, just being more clear about what you do and who you do it for, can be huge when creating community. Because if people can't talk about you in a clear way, and so for me, what I had this realization in the last couple of years, that when people aren't really clear about what they do, it drives me crazy, because I want to make a connection for them,
right?
Like, more than anything. That's what I
so
live
true.
for, making connections. And when they're like, I sell skincare, I work with anyone with skin, I'm like, I can't, I have a mental Rolodex. I can't go through the mental Rolodex and go, oh yeah, that person has skin, but tell me that you work with people with adult acne, and okay, that would be a really tough referral to make, but that was the first thing that came to my brain. Oh yeah, Heather, I've noticed you have some adult acne. Here's my friend. Anyway, but when people are really clear about what they do and who they do it for, then I can go, oh, I want to introduce you to this person.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and particularly in the context of community, being willing to put your stake in the ground in order to have others say, oh, this is a community for, right? And be able to refer other people to the community, to you as the person behind the community, whatever. It's critical. My brain is a lot the same way. And I'll ask people, do you work across industries? Who are your clients? Like, because I too want to make connections. I want to know where they fit. I want to know who else I know that should know them. Right. And if they're like, oh, everybody, I really, and it still continues to surprise me how many people have that wide open answer, like, oh yeah, my clients really can be in any industry. And
But here's what I've seen. Your brain remembers when you say something and people laugh. So your brain remembers, and you're going to repeat that joke or whatever. So
Mhm.
what I have seen in networking groups, as an example, is the chiropractor will say, I work with anybody with a spine, and the whole room laughs.
And they're
And
like,
I'm
that
like,
obviously worked.
they all laugh, but do they get referrals? And it's the same thing when people introduce themselves and say, well, I work with small to medium sized companies. Again,
That's like
because
99.9% of the business market in the United States.
yes, and how do you define? And so that's always my follow-up question. Okay,
Mhm.
how do you define small and medium sized business? Because technically, as a solo business owner, I'm what the government calls a micro business owner.
Mhm.
So small to medium sized business, that can mean almost any, that could be QFC, right? Like
Well,
Kroger could be a small business, a small
yeah,
medium sized business.
no, that's right. Right. I mean, the Small Business Administration office for, in the US, I think if you're making less than $3 million a year in your particular location, you're a small business, right? That's so many businesses.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm hearing from you that people make mistakes in, not paying attention to how people like to be communicated with, not putting a stake in the ground about who they're for, and then also trying to be too many places. Can we talk specifically about the location? Because I think this is
Oh
a sticking
yeah.
point for a lot of people that want to build community and they're like, but where, where and
Right.
how, like, the logistics.
Well, so for me, um, when I ran a social media marketing company, I went to every networking thing I could go to, right? Because I kept thinking, falsely, by the way, that this next event is going to be the one where I meet the one person who changes everything. And that doesn't happen. And so so I was in this, I call it the hamster wheel. You're on the hustle hamster wheel because you're networking, and never following up, by the way, because you're too busy networking.
You're stuck on the front end of that cycle. Yeah.
Yes. And so for me, what it meant that was I was having every coffee date out there. I was going to every networking event, but it also felt like I was working from the time I got up until the time I went to bed,
Mm,
because I was networking all day, but I still had to do my work. And so I think that there's a book called The Power of Who that's been out for a really long time. And one of the questions they ask is, what if you already knew everyone you needed to know to be successful in your business? And chances are you already do,
right.
right? It's tapping into the power, it's tapping into your network and asking better questions and dialing it back, like dialing it back to a place where, oh, I can go to networking events and do the follow-up because I've created the space to do that.
Mm, mm,
Um, and the other thing, like, I generally don't go to free networking events anymore. There's a gal that I know, she wrote a blog post years ago about free and how expensive free really is.
right.
And like, I don't like to go to free events because they attract it's just a different level of people.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, that's a very broad generality, but yes, can you meet awesome people at free events? Probably. It's just I've spent enough time going to enough of those to know, okay, let me not
Yeah.
today.
Well, there is, having a payment wall really for anything, there's a different level of person that shows up, and it's not, a level of person, level of probably commitment to business,
Sure.
commitment to results that shows up behind that payment wall, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's networking, whether it's an event that you're putting on in your business that's not networking, but content or workshop or whatever, it really is true that people value what they pay for.
Well, and think about, I mean, how many events have I been to that were free, and how many people don't show up? How many
Yeah.
people that, like, I went to this event and then all the name tags were laid out, and an hour into the event, there's still like 60 name tags out. And I'm like, what the heck? Well, it's a free event.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't lose anything if I don't go.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about in-person networking, right? One of the ways that you can create community. And yet, now in the midst of the pandemic, and clearly if we haven't already, we should be pivoting to take a huge component of our business online, probably including the community building. What do you have to say around location, and for people that, want to build communities, how you select that, right? There are a lot of options these days.
There are a lot of options. And I think sometimes it's just about, you got to dip your toe in the water in a bunch of places to find your people. And the location thing, it was interesting. I had a live book launch, and I don't know exactly how many people were here, but it felt so foreign. I was like, wait, how do we do this again? Like,
people in person.
How do we talk to the gal came with the food, and she's like, where do you want me to set up the food? I'm like, I don't remember. But I think it's about testing out some things and seeing what connections you can make. So there's a local gal, she's a mortgage broker, and I go to a number of her events that she does virtually. And I make it my goal to connect with at least one person. If it's two, great, but I can tell a lot I can tell a lot about the event by how those conversations go, right? Are they, hey, we're really getting to know one another conversations, or are they buy my stuff conversations?
Ew, yeah.
And so I've just had some really great, I feel like I've been lucky with some of the groups that I've chosen. And there are some other groups that I have whittled away. Actually, in the Seattle area, unfortunately, most of the networking groups don't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I am a member of WBO, which is Women Business Owners. They've actually been in business for 42 years. So we've got some staying power, but it's been really hard to watch these other groups. People who relied on that live in-person networking. And I will also say there's a lot of people that complain about Zoom and Zoom fatigue, and I get it. And could we stop talking about Zoom fatigue?
Right. Well, it's not going anywhere. Let's be clear that Zoom is not going anywhere.
And for me, if somebody says, hey, do you want to talk via phone or via Zoom? I'm always going to say Zoom because, well, one, it helps me stay focused.
Yeah.
If I'm talking on the phone, I could maybe check my email. I mean, I might be able to do something else, but if I'm on Zoom with someone, I'm giving them my full attention.
Right. And you're paying attention to their face. You know, the level of communication is a different kind of communication than happens over the phone where you can't see them.
Well, and I think that's very true in building community in virtual events is if you don't have your camera on, okay, I get it. Sometimes you're driving, so you don't want your camera on. I'm totally for that. But if you have your camera on and I can see that the whole time we're in this meeting, you're looking at a second screen, like, I don't want to connect with you because you're not
Mm-mm.
in it.
Yeah.
You're not in this with me. And I want to be in it with other people who are in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an important point you raised, the role of video nowadays in creating community, right? It's essential. It is like doing community without the visual support, especially if there cannot be the in-person, I just don't think you get there. And so I think that's huge. You have to figure out a way to show up on video, right? And create that connection, whether it's one-on-one as you build out the community, whether it's in the context of a group. I'm sure you've got lots to say about that, right? I know plenty of people who are very resistant to showing up on video, even though they know they need to be there, right?
It's I'm sure there's some stuff going on. There's some enoughness stuff. There's some
Mhm.
worthiness stuff. There's I'm not camera ready
Well, this
type.
concept, yeah, I'm laughing because for people that can't see me, right? I've got a hat on. My hair's kind of as brushed as my hair ever looks because it has natural wave, right? I definitely currently in my life, I literally have a t-shirt on that says mom hustle, right? It's underneath my white blazer. It's a lit like I'm
But
halvesies.
but the thing is that, okay, so I want to honor that it's tough for some people. I don't want to
Mhm.
just like,
Gloss
that's
over.
dumb. Right.
Yeah.
Because, but the other thing is part of the connection piece is about authenticity and
Yes.
just showing up as you are and whatever that looks like. And um, I think part of the challenge is that we're in this age of cotton candy content, right? Like everyone's Instagram life, which is BS, most of it, right?
Ugh.
Like the filters and the this and the that. And so um when, gosh, can you just show up? And like there was a gal I was on a call earlier today and she just started crying and she's like, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm not normally like this. I'm like, well, first of all, can women quit apologizing
Yeah.
for
Right.
having emotions? But I would guess that the people who were new to that room felt even more connected to her because of that,
Mm.
right? Like it's not always perfect.
Well, and I
It's
would say, yeah, sorry to cut you off.
no, you're good.
It's not always perfect. And in my opinion, it's better when it's not always perfect, right? The
Yes.
gift for me of COVID has been that some of these whatever trappings have to fall away because life forced them to. And it's like for me, if I was gonna launch my podcast, show up to my podcast, have client meetings, like I had to do this for the last 18 months in the context of also having two little people live behind me at any moment doing crazy stuff or screaming in the back, whatever, like all sorts of wild stuff. And
I feel like that has been the biggest blessing is
yes,
if I'm in a group Zoom meeting and a cat doesn't walk across the screen, I'm like disappointed.
right. Like show me some
Whereas
real life here. Show me
like,
some real life.
it's real life.
Yeah.
It's, the kids coming in and waving. And I mean, I, uh, I don't have littles.
Yeah.
Um, but I do have a barking dog, which is why I come to my co-working space most of the time. But I also think there's just this greater understanding of life
That's
and life
right.
happens.
And life
And
happens. And I think we have a whole new level of grace across the board that most people are willing to give, having been through the experience of COVID
agreed.
and just understanding that for business to even happen, for this call to even happen, we have to accept these other things about life that we really didn't accept before. We tried to hide, we tried to perfect, we tried to
Sure.
like only show up if we'd brushed our hair or whatever. Right. But it's really true. And it's like the conversation that I had right before this, before we went live, the gal said, "Oh, I shouldn't have dressed up." And I laughed. I said, "No." She said that because of me, right? I'm very casual. And I said, "No, come as you are. And this is how I am today." So I decided to still show up, and I'm in my mom hat, and right, I might have put a little blush on or something, but the alternative of not showing up is just not an alternative. And I feel like more people get that now.
Yes.
And it's actually easier to drop those other layers that we put on ourselves of like, well, I should be this, or I don't look perfect, or my lighting isn't look like her lighting or whatever.
Right. Oh yeah. It's the level of scrutiny we put ourselves through it can be heartbreaking at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really true. Well, and last year I ran an experiment where I showed up live every Monday. I did an Ask Me Anything live. As soon as COVID hit, I realized this is going to be hugely problematic for so many small businesses, so many of my clients. Like, oh, we just got to get people online. We've got to get their businesses protected, right? They need to understand what it means to be online from a legal perspective and have a business that's taken care of. And so I just told myself I'm going live every Monday until, anybody that's connected to me has their questions answered. They know what they need. They're not, I didn't want anybody left out in the rain. And aside from a few Mondays that fell on holidays, hell or high water, I went live every Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific, for probably an hour. And it was amazing who would show up and how grateful they were there. Even when my life was chaos in the background, they were like, "It's so great that you're doing this." And the weird part of that experiment is it took literally that level of chaos and forcing myself to still go live to actually kind of get me over the hump of realizing like, oh, this is what we all should have been doing all along. Now we're just in this compressed period where people are forced to accept it, right? So,
Right.
but people on the other side, I think, are so much more receptive when you show up real, regardless of, whatever circumstances.
Yeah, for sure.
And what a powerful thing in the context of building a community to show up, right?
Yeah.
So what is because you've built communities online, you are owner of a co-working space that it looks like you're sitting in right now,
I am,
right?
yes.
So you've done both the in-person real life community building and the online work. Are there differences between the two?
That is a good question. I suppose, yes, because there's a proximity piece,
Right.
to the
Right.
in-person. And, we notice when people aren't here, right? So
Yeah.
there's a guy here who he works for Facebook. And last week, we didn't see him Monday or Tuesday, but boy, when he came in Wednesday, like, what happened? Like, give us the inside scoop. And so I will say that there's something really, really nice about having built-in people to talk to.
Right.
If you want to, and if time allows, right? Like it's not always like we're all running our own businesses.
Right. You can't just hang out all day.
But I think there's a lot of similarities because you're still getting to know the person and honoring how they want to be connected with and all of those other things.
Building relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. When people think of, especially in the online space, building a community, I can imagine, and I know you're a social media guru, I can imagine people get overwhelmed really quickly thinking about social media, what it takes to do that. Do they need to be all the places? What are ways that they can streamline or simplify their social media if they are, trying to build a community?
Well, one would be to know who your champions are, like whittling down that list.
Yep.
And then figuring out where they are. Right. And so as an example, LinkedIn right now, like if your listeners aren't on LinkedIn and they're not creating content on LinkedIn, they're missing out on a humongous opportunity. So
LinkedIn, I shout about LinkedIn. Yeah.
The number is staggering. There are 300 million active daily users. I think that's the right number. Only 1%, 10%. It's a very low number of those people post content ever. So if you think about 300 million down to 10%, that's 300,000 people, which in the scheme of social media, I know I'm saying like it's only 300,000 people, but when you think about there are 1 billion active users on Facebook every day.
Yeah.
300,000 people that are creating content, that's not very many. And so it's LinkedIn is full of opportunity. And chances are, if you are in business and you are connecting with other business people, they're also on LinkedIn. And especially right now with a lot of people getting more and more, I don't know what the word is, but there's a lot of feelings people have right now about Facebook.
That's a really good way to say it. There's a lot of blank feelings people are having right now about Facebook.
Well, and part of it is they don't understand the First Amendment and that Facebook doesn't have to give them the right to say whatever they want because they're a private company. Okay, so there's that. But there's also there's some problematic things about Facebook.
Yeah.
So
well, and what it's done to actual communities, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
That's the problem that I have with it.
Well, this statistic I heard the other day was that 90% of Facebook users are outside of North America. Okay. So only 10% of the users are in the United States and Canada. However, 87% of the resources they dedicate toward policing misinformation is spent in America.
I believe that 100%.
So it's like an 80-20, like 90% of the users are out there, but they're spending all their resources.
They should just chop us all off, right? They should just get rid of like their North American segment. For me, I have to confess that when Facebook went down, whenever it went down, was it this week or last week?
Last Monday. Yeah.
Last month. Yeah. So I didn't even know. And I was on a call with somebody that afternoon and they were like, oh, did you hear about the social media, craziness or whatever? Because I think Instagram was also down. And I was like, no, what's going on? She was like, Facebook is down. And I was like, totally like happy dance. Like, what if I know I shouldn't say this out loud. What if it went down permanently? I think some of our problems would be solved because of that. So,
well, I thought about that a lot that day because it wasn't just that Facebook was down. Facebook lost their connection to the internet. So they were not just down, they were gone. Like their DNS did not exist. And think about how many people's businesses revolve around either they do Facebook ads for a business or they do social media marketing for companies. So it was not just Facebook, it was Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, because everything that Facebook owned was down. And it really did. It's like, it's a good reminder for ownership. And when it comes to Facebook or Instagram, they own you, not the other way around.
Right. Well, do not build your business on rented property, right?
I think that about TikTok, right? Like, I don't use TikTok. I think TikTok is problematic for a number of reasons. One, it's owned by a company in China, which has questionable ethics to begin with. But, these influencers, which that word makes me want to vomit, but they build this platform and they have 1 million followers and they're making money, right? They're making money because of that. But if TikTok goes down and is gone, you have nothing. Like you have 1 million followers, you have nothing. I have a friend who, she had a Facebook group that she had built forever, and then one day it was just gone.
I've
And
had friends that have gone through similar stuff where for some random reason it just got shut down. Like they didn't even, do anything controversial or wrong, but something happened and it like that, it was gone, it was shut down, no more access.
and in the case of, there's a lot of business owners that violate the terms of service without
Yes.
knowing it because they haven't read the terms of service. So if you violate the terms of service and something is removed, you have no recourse because you clicked that little button that said you agreed.
Those damn lawyers.
I know.
I
Now, I have read the terms of service. I've read the terms of service for Facebook a lot.
Right.
Just because for me trying to understand, for when I was managing pages, I wanted to make sure I wasn't violating a rule on behalf of my clients.
Right. Yes.
And there's some interesting things in the terms of service where I feel like it's vague on purpose. So one of the examples is, it says you cannot use your personal profile for the sole purpose of marketing your business. Okay. So is that 10% of the time?
Right. Sole purpose? What is the
30%
definition
of the time? I don't know what you mean. So anyway,
yeah,
I could go on and on about the terms of service, but
right.
But yeah, I think the platforms going down is just a good reminder, like, okay, you know what? Those are all relationships in a social networking platform. So I took that opportunity I messaged people on LinkedIn. I texted people. I'm like, hey, I want to get your email address and your phone number and your mailing address just in case.
Right. Well, and that's what I was going to ask. So the solution would be, you have multiple ways to communicate with somebody, right? Like real world ways to keep that connection ongoing, to keep that community together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, oh my goodness. Technology, when it works, is brilliant. And then technology, when it doesn't, right, can really put people in a pinch. And, this issue, I had a friend who built her entire business on Google Plus. Right? I know. Yeah. One of those things that's like, just one day, Google decides they're done with Google Plus.
It's a great opportunity. And I think that's where, as a business owner, it's hard sometimes to suss out, like, what are the good opportunities and what are the, is having a Facebook business page, is that a good opportunity? Today it is. Is doing that on Instagram? Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can't put all of our eggs in one basket either.
Yeah. Well, and I think definitely that, not putting our eggs in one basket, and planning for flexibility, like building flexibility into your business plan, because anytime, especially in the digital age, that you over rely on something, I just think it puts your business at such greater risk. Right. And so, relying on any platforms, I mean, even, you look at website hosts, hosting companies, you look at all of the things that can go wrong behind the scenes, online on your own platform. Right.
Well, even Zoom, right? So the people who thrived during the pandemic are ones that pivoted. I hate the word pivot, who shifted quickly, right? But even Zoom had trouble in the beginning because there were some of us who've been using Zoom all along. right? I've been
Mhm.
using Zoom all along,
Yep.
but all of a sudden, everyone, all their children were using Zoom for school, and Zoom had some issues.
Right.
And so
Suddenly
it's
their
like,
security features were not actual security
right,
features.
right.
Yes.
And, you know, but like you said, where you host your website, I mean, my cell phone, right? Like I'm with
Mhm.
T-Mobile. They've had some data challenges recently, multiple times. And it's just a good reminder that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and then you think about all of this in the context of community and holding a community, like it becomes so much more important that you have the flexibility, that you have the multiple ways of maintaining contact and reaching out and communicating with folks, which also for me has me thinking like, okay, like even in regards to your database and nurturing your list, like, have you trained them to open emails in case this other stuff doesn't, like, how do you incentivize people, right, to
right.
engage with you in ways that will support that community, will support, for example, my ongoing Ask Me Anything lives, right? You actually have to open the email to get that information. And so part of it
What?
is, I know, actually creating and delivering information in a way that still makes it easy to consume and take the action and stay engaged. There's so much there, but it's
And that make it easy, that's an ongoing theme in
yes.
this bringing joy and ease is make it easy for people to get in touch with you, make it easy for people to
Mhm.
find your pricing, make it, if I go to your Facebook page and I can't find your phone number, that, and then I go to your website and I still can't find a phone number, like depending on how bad I want to reach you will be the level of like how committed am I?
Right.
But but I'm but for some people, they're not going to look that hard.
No, no. And I think it's important to remember, like, even you saying that, like, you go looking for a phone number. I'm the same way. I'm very old fashioned. I pick up the phone. I spend a lot of my time on the phone because I have two wild children in my life. And if I only lived on Zoom, let's be clear that I love Zoom and I do a lot of Zoom. But if I only lived on Zoom, there may be times where I can't check on my children and I need to be able to do that. So for certain types of calls, like my short
Sure.
introductory calls, they're happening on telephone, right? And so making it easy for people. But I think so many people get weird and protective about their phone number. And, they actually make it really challenging to get in
Yeah.
touch with them. And I know this because I do a lot of infringement work in the online space. And so I get really good at finding people. And I
Mm.
also, right, come across quite a few who have attempted to make it fairly challenging to get in touch with them.
Intentionally.
Right?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it makes
Okay.
sense if you're up to shady business online.
Yes.
Anyways, Tracey, I adore you. I mean, I feel like I could chat all day with you about the stuff that you have experience with, and we've really just touched on, the tips of it. For folks that want more information, I know there's a variety of ways they can reach out to you, and we will include all of your links on our show notes page. So if you're listening, that is at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. But Tracey, where do you like to show up online?
I really do like to show up on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram. I do. Instagram is getting more fun for me. But don't even get me going on Reels. Holy cow. The other day, like an hour. I, I did it. I watched an hour of Reels, which are like 15 seconds at a time or whatever they are. Anyway.
Well, there you go. Ding, 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 right? The power of
Oh,
video, the
I'm not
power
doing
of
it. I'm
reels.
not
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. I hear you.
I'm not anyway.
So
But I'm
Instagram, Facebook, where else?
LinkedIn. I'm
Yep.
pretty easy to find.
Okay.
I'm Ignite Your Champions everywhere.
I love that. We'll also share a link to your book. Again,
Oh, that'd be great.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, if you're listening, check out Tracey's book, Ignite Your Champions. And Tracey, for those that are with us today, what final takeaway do you have? What action step or takeaway would you like them to either be thinking about or to go do?
Well, I would invite you to really think about who in your life are your champions. And then a little giveaway I have is an Ignite Your Champions bingo game. So it's just, I like to make things fun. So it's a bingo board with 24 ideas for ways that you can reach out to your network.
Oh, I love that. So we
Yeah.
will be sure to have a link to Tracey's bingo board. I love that. Who doesn't love bingo?
Yeah, I would like to go play bingo right now.
I
Anyway,
know,
honestly, I just want to do anything. Can we go
right?
roller skating? Can we do?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, this morning, my daughter, who's 4, asked me, she's in the process of learning letters, right? H and B can sometimes get a little mixed up. And she said, Mom, what does HINGO spell? And I was like, Hingo? Well, she's obviously mixed up our little, we do all the
Oh
nighttime
gosh,
songs around here, but I laughed so hard. What does HINGO spell? I was like,
that's fantastic.
it spells bingo. Yes. Oh, Tracey, I adore you. I'm so happy to see you. And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your brilliance with us and your warmth and all the gems around the importance of creating community and what also sometimes we do the wrong way and how to correct that. So super important.
I'm so glad it was honestly like, I was so excited to see you and chat with you, of course, but thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'd love to have you on here again sometime.
Okay.